My name is John Lovell, and I've been a legislative advocate for law enforcement interests at the Capitol continuously since 1984. Many people have asked me, well, why did some of your clients get involved in supporting the array of medical marijuana bills that were enacted last year? And sometimes it's helpful just to look at the history. Since the initial enactment of the Compassionate Use Act, there have, over the course of the years, been a number of bills that have been introduced in the legislature. And from the perspective of the entities who I represent, those bills were all problematic for a number of reasons. In our view, they, rather than regulate, they simply ratified questionable practices. They permitted, many of them permitted what we refer to as the Walmartization of the industry by actually allowing unrestricted vertical integration. Some of them had minimal barriers against people with hardcore criminal records from getting licenses. Virtually all of them vitiated local control and had inappropriate regulatory structures. They typically all went to ABC as the regulatory body, which creates, first of all, a conceptual problem. Medical marijuana is that. It's a medicine. Alcoholic beverages are a recreational product, so that conceptual dissonance was apparent. Plus, ABC has extraordinary issues in the regulation of medical marijuana, or of alcohol. And so the law enforcement community was very uncomfortable with that kind of a construct. So what started to change? Well, in the early days of this legislation, it was essentially law enforcement on one side, and on the other side, advocates who favored medical marijuana, and in some cases, favored broader legalization. But in the last 4 or 5 years, that changed. People seeing that there was a profit to be made here, that there was the potential of a second gold rush, got involved in the legislative process. And what that meant is that a lot of the legislative legerdemain that causes heartburn among good government people came to pass. You saw gotten amends. You'd think that a bill had been killed, and then like Lazarus from the grave, it arose in another vehicle. And this particularly happened in 2013, where we were ultimately able to defeat a bill, but by a scant 2 votes on a procedural motion on the Senate floor. So after the 2013 session, the California Police Chiefs Association decided that, working in conjunction with the League of California Cities, they themselves were going to co-sponsor a bill. And this would be a bill that would be different. It would set a regulatory net over the industry. It would divest, by virtue of that, divest questionable practices from the array of practices. It would prevent vertical integration so that you didn't have a big tobacco-like industry. It would have real barriers to, but not insurmountable, but real barriers to persons with criminal records from getting licenses. And it would have an appropriate regulatory structure. That first bill, Senate Bill 1262, was introduced in 2014. The bill did not pass. It got out of its first house, it died in its second house. But significantly, the presence of a real regulatory bill caused another bill that the law enforcement community and the cities were strongly opposed to, AB 1894, to be resoundingly rejected on the floor of its House of Origin. In fact, to give you a sense of the texture of that rejection, even though the majority party caucus recommended a yes vote on that particular bill. More members of the majority party either voted against that bill or declined to vote for that bill than voted for it. It was a resounding defeat. So in the wake of the defeat of our measure in the second house, we began work with Assemblymember Cooley, later with Assemblymember Bonta and Senator McGuire. And what you have are the three bills that were enacted, which we believe are true to our core principles: real regulation, preservation of local control, an assurance that the integrity of the industry will not be corroded. We don't view our work as done yet. We are going to be very active in looking at cleanup bills. One has already been introduced that creates a number of issues for the people I represent. We are obviously very concerned about the Parker Initiative because, unlike the array of bills that were passed, the Parker Initiative embraces vertical integration and the Walmartization of the industry. Unlike the bills that were passed under the Parker Initiative, the mere fact that someone has been convicted of felony trafficking in heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine is not in and of itself enough to deny a license. Those are issues that we are going to have major concerns about. But we were very proud to work with Assemblyman Cooley and his colleagues in helping to secure the work product that has now been enacted.
Thank you, John.